Tony, what's going on?
Well, you know,
Not enough. I learn something every day, which
that's
is good.
good.
I feel like I might be gaining just a little bit of wisdom if I do that. So yeah. Funny story. You remember that book I mentioned, was it last week? 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah.
So I was listening to that again this morning on my way to work out, and they started talking about a young couple back in the 80s that were trying to figure things out, and they were running a restaurant and they did very poorly at that, and they ended up having to sell it for a loss. And the wife, her name was Linda, she ended up getting into real estate, and it ended up being Linda and Jimmy McKissick, which are huge within our Keller Williams family. And Linda ended up going on to just not only starting a business, owning a franchise, but then also running the Ohio Valley region. And it was really interesting to hear the perspective of the story told from somebody outside of our company in a book. So I thought it was very, very cool. I'm like, I know those
Huh.
people. But the McKissicks are known for their real estate sales, but not just that, profit share, huge into profit share. Jimmy took the reins and ran with profit share and told everybody he knew about Keller Williams and how awesome it was back in the 90s when profit share wasn't really like a huge thing yet. And man, these guys, they're getting checks for like $100 and some thousand a month now. It's crazy. But that's because they just introduced so many people to Keller Williams. So
Yeah.
interesting story there. So yeah, that's what I got this morning on 10x is easier than 2x. So anyway, good stuff.
It is something to just out of the blue, all of a sudden you get paid. And I mean, you didn't really do anything, but here you get a deposit in your account. So
Those are fun. Yeah, those
that's
are fun.
fun.
Yeah. I think the first check I ever got was $6. And I had asked Brent Goodall to join Keller Williams, and so he did. And his first sale, the profit share was $6 on that thing. And
There
so
you go. That's all right.
I told him we'd buy him a beer with that, and then it went on from there. And now then it went to like buying Stephanie shoes or something like that. It was a little bit more money. So we kind of have that joke when profit share hits. So Stephanie's getting a new pair of shoes or something.
Yeah.
But
Mama needs a new pair of shoes.
right. But if you ever get a chance to study the McKissicks, they are
Mhm.
great people, very humble. You'll see them at family reunion, or you'll see them at mega camp in Austin. So if you get a chance, shake their hand and get to know those people. Great people. With that,
McKissick.
I'm going to turn it over to John. I think John's running the show today. Is that right?
Yeah, so I owe you guys an apology. I actually just got in here. Hey, these guys back here, they're getting ready to get on here too.
Man,
Oh, that's JD. I got to call him back. So I'm on my phone. I apologize to you guys. Normally, Brandy asked me to host, and so it's always a poor reflection of my scheduling if I'm running behind, but I am. And that's kind of seems to be my life. But going to my desk and logged in.
that'll be
It's been a
noted.
good morning, man. It's been a good morning. But yeah, I was going to start today off with, I was hoping Darren was going to be on here. He may be a few more minutes. There's the ladies.
Well,
There's
I can
Sandy.
help with this. I just
Morning,
about had a
Nanette.
heart attack a second ago while you're getting ready.
Heart attack.
Oh yeah, I was like a real estate heart attack, So I was
So tell
like,
us about it, Sandy. Start us off with it. I've got a couple
so
topics, but we can get to that later.
yeah, so we're under contract on this deal that on the seller's disclosure, they just EX'd every dang thing you could think of. And I don't like
Oh,
that because why not let us inspect and do our things, And there's something else, if not those things, to cancel over. So anyway, I got this. I sent over the resolution. We needed a deck fixed, and She said the seller will need to get bids for the items, so it will take a few days. The deck is excluded on the seller's disclosure, so that will need to be removed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I about had a heart attack because I'd forgotten what I'd done. Well, on my contract that I sent over to her, it says all items marked EX on seller's disclosure and condition addendum can be used to cancel, renegotiate, or accept in their current condition according to the inspection paragraph 14. So I'm saved.
Okay. Right.
So I'm proud of myself, I guess, for that.
DYA right there, Sandy.
Been a mess. I could have been doing $3,000 worth of deck repairs for that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's a great point. So let's talk about that at a little more detail. With my question would be, what is everybody's approach to EX? I mean, James and I actually utilize that quite a bit with our listings, but we typically only suggest that, and I don't know if we're doing this right or wrong, and maybe it's just us, but we typically like chimneys, fireplace, like if they're traditional, right? Hot tub, like if hot tub's a great example, if it's staying, you know, most of the time the sellers don't want to, but we actually suggest to our sellers and our listing clients to only use it at a minimum on those items that you typically don't want to do, or that we know, like say for example, listing we just got done yesterday. It's like a 5-month close, by the way. It was number 4. It was like our 4th under contract. Anyway, it's finally taken care of and done. But that chimney, they had lived there 13 years and they had never used it. When they bought it, it passed an inspection, but because they had never utilized it as a traditional wood burn, they did not want to cover that. So our suggestion was let's leave it EX. But doing everything EX, that's interesting. I've not ran into that, Sandy. So what do you typically?
They didn't put it on everything, but they put it on a lot of things. And so I had a seller, I don't utilize EX very often because if they don't cancel for that, they're going to cancel for something else anyway.
Right.
And if that were the only thing to be fixed, we might fix it. I don't know, you know. So I don't utilize it much, but I did have a seller who had a stove and she put EX on the stove, and that was because the timer didn't work. And she wasn't going to fix it. Like, that's okay. Put EX on it then, you know, and just put timer doesn't work and you're not fixing it. Because I think it really draws attention to things like, and they can cancel over something else. So it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. So that's just me.
Yeah, our EX was, like I say, was really on items that I always tell them, let's put it on items that people, I think, you know, kind of collectively, which I'm not a big fan of that term, but you know, as a broad perspective, I think everybody would look at that and go, yeah, that's fair. But other things, I don't think we want to put EX on because, to your point, Sandy, I feel like it would actually cause people to go, why are they doing that? You know?
Well, the reason I went through and said we were going to be able to renegotiate any of those EXs is we're FHA. And that deck needed a couple things. And I knew it. And she knew we were FHA. And she knew that deck needed a couple things. So she just forgot. She didn't look back at my contract. But I'm in first place here. So she's not going to be happy. But, you know, it is what it is.
Ryan and Jake both commented on here, and you guys can weigh in here too. But they're both their comments.
Yeah.
If you want to draw attention to it, EX, and then Jake, you had a good one on the fridge there. That's a good point.
Yeah, John, to your point right there, just be able to back it up with why it's an EX. If you can explain that, that's going to make a huge difference, because of just putting it on there and not explaining what's going on, then they're going to want to investigate why it is that. And is it because you've never used it, or you don't know anything about it, or that you know something's wrong with it? and you're just not going to want to fix it. And that's okay. If it's a button on the stove, that's fine. The stove's 15 years old. It works great. That button doesn't work great. We're not going to fix it.
Right.
That's what it is, you know. So that's easily fixed, easily explained. But I think again, it goes back to communication. If we can communicate what it is exactly we're doing here, accurately with a potential buyer, you know, you're going to walk right through this, and you're going to be able to protect your client
Mhm.
at the same time.
Well, I'd like to know where it says on the seller's disclosure about a deck. I don't know
It
that I've ever.
doesn't. They wrote it in.
Oh,
Down on
okay.
the other.
Oh, it's down in the other. They
I'm
got
like,
decks,
oh
roofs,
my, I didn't
gutters,
know I needed to
chimneys.
be worried about the deck operating and staying. So, yeah, okay, that makes more sense.
They just want you to know they're not fixing it, but
I just about had a heart attack, Sandy. I thought, oh
oh
my gosh, all these years there's been a deck on the seller's disclosure.
no, it's not on there, but they EX'd everything they could that you could possibly want fixed. Yeah.
Well, those are
And
great.
so
That's
I
a
just annexed him with my offer.
And they signed
But
it.
she did, yeah, they did. So I'm like happy.
And that's good to know because that doesn't always come to mind. So that's you thinking out of the box on how
Yep.
you can protect your buyer.
I really didn't want to fix the deck. If because we're FHA, you know, we would have had to if they still wanted the house. You know what I mean? I knew
decks are
the things
expensive
that were gonna
now.
pop up,
Yeah, it's
so
a
I
lot of
had
money.
to save us.
Hey, Sandy, would that been an appraisal condition though?
That's what I feel like will come, but I knew their concerns were if anything comes up on the appraisal, we're not paying for that either. By the way, they
Right.
put that in MLS, which I know the contract supersedes that. So that's okay. But at the same time, I'm gonna make double okay that we're
Mhm.
rolling in the same direction. I think she just forgot to read my offer. Took her 2 days to read it, but she didn't read it.
Hey, Sandy, that's a great example of bulletproofing your transaction right there, and
Mhm.
going the extra mile for your client, because that you cleared a path to make sure you could get it done for them. That's awesome. That's a great story right there. You should teach a class on that.
Oh, yeah. I could.
Well, so not to shift gears, but I mean, Lonnie, you joined us and you weren't with us in the first few minutes. Obviously, you got a lot going on, but on behalf of myself, Nanette, Cares, Southland, man, um,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry for your loss, man, and what you're going through right now.
Thank
And
you.
so you've been a big part of getting all of us rolling in business, and you know, we all keep rolling together. So just know we're all here, and whatever you guys need, man, you guys holding up all right?
Yeah, doing well. Thank you for the kind words. It's just the new normal now, and we just
Yeah.
have to kind of take it one day at a time. And a lot of family coming in over the next 7 to 10 days. So just spinning a lot of plates handling that. But for me, having a normal routine is very important. So exercising in the morning and being on my calls and things like that. That's how I choose to move forward.
Yeah, yeah, it's something we all experience in those moments, man, but to your point, especially in the free market, we have to we have to show up for ourselves, right, in business, and you've done a good example of showing that, and Ryan and many other owners and leaders in Southland. So yeah, just know we're all here, something you need, or and we'll continue to get updates through you guys. I know you and Amber, and details come out, let us know, and definitely be there for you.
Will do.
Yeah. One thing that came up that I was going to mention as a topic, Sandy, I appreciated your EX seller's disclosure conversation, because that's something I wouldn't have thought of. But we've actually been having a lot of those seller disclosure fill out conversations, and so that's definitely something to was really good to talk about and go through, because iron sharpens iron. But the one I was going to bring up was similar. As far as listings go, it was a septic. Yesterday, James and I got a deal closed. Well, we actually closed the sellers a week and a half ago, but the buy side, they got closed yesterday, which thankful for that. the co-oping agent was a fellow veteran and a different brokerage agent, but super solid dude to work with. Lender experience was a little different. They were a middle brokerage lending company that is like middleman, and Rocket Mortgage was actually the lender, just for context for you guys. But something interesting happened, which was where they had escrowed a couple of items early on when we went under contract. The lender said we could do that. And then the underwriter actually gave a conditional clear to close and then a verbal clear to close. But then last second, as we were closing a few days early on the sell side, pulled back those two escrow items on the actual physical work needed to get done. The topic I was going to bring up was to see, the question would be if anyone else has had this happen. But what occurred is Truninger, and I don't want to ever, I've known Bill and his company a long time. They've serviced our septic at our house. So I just want to be very clear that this is purely educational, but the perspective we're coming from. But we never had this happen before, and we've used them before. But they had given an original septic tank inspection as the company that was called out by the sellers to look at this to address the issue. And so it's an old concrete 1,000-gallon tank, inlet outlet lateral line system. The lateral line was the old lateral line, so it wasn't long enough or big enough for the modern code. Fast forward, that was one of the escrowed items. They had deemed it as it was a functioning system, but they had deemed that there was an issue with the inlet and outlet inside the tank. But then the bigger picture was that lateral line had to get replaced. So that was the big item. We had a concession down to that, lateral line getting fixed, paid at closing, all that kind of stuff. So that's all full context. So the topic would be when the new company came out and dug in, it wasn't Apex. It unfortunately wouldn't work out for their scheduling, but we went with this person the seller was related to, kind of type thing, but they're licensed and insured company. Anyway, they came out, they dug in on a moment's notice, did the full lateral replacement, and got same day county inspection. But when county inspection came out, they actually informed us that the original inspection that was turned in by the original company that gave us the look at the tank, they had stated there was something wrong with the inlet outlet, and the county actually looked at the system and they said no, in fact it's perfectly fine. So it's probably an oversight. Probably it's not that big a deal. Sometimes, kind of like going an automotive mechanic, like James and I talked about, like sometimes it's maybe we get two opinions or something like that. Maybe we get two different looks at it. If somebody's willing to inspect or look at a quote unquote big item like that, is it worth getting? Or have you guys made a habit of just going off of the one inspection to trust it? Or, sometimes they cost money. Sometimes they'll look at it if they can get the work at the back end. I mean, I don't know, but we thought that was, it could have been an unnecessary hurdle to get over if they had not misdiagnosed the tank piece of it, because not that it was an item we got done. The lateral was what we got done. But I guess my question would be, have you guys ever taken an approach to get two different inspections or two different opinions on a big ticket item like that? I guess that's the question.
I've suggested to a lot of agents that have gotten some wonky feedback on the inspections on septics to spend the extra dollars, because it might save them a lot of money if that inspection is incorrect.
That's where I was kind of going with it. That was, so the seller came back to me and was like, hey, should we have, right?
Yeah.
And then in the big scheme of things, I mean, we're 2 or 3 different times under contract on this property. So there's a lot of hurdles we're getting over with, perception and back on market and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, tackling the bigger items. But Rusty, that was kind of exactly what they asked me. And so I was like, well, I'll take ownership. I mean, absolutely, man. I mean, I make a lot of mistakes daily, but we don't always have all the answers, We just sometimes go,
And sometimes, John, don't beat yourself up too hard. Sometimes on those reports, I mean, first of all, it depends on who does them, is kind of how I handle that. And then, B, sometimes you don't know until you get in there and open things up. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of times we don't know. We're like, so we call it investigational digging. Before we go and replace things, we do an investigational dig to help the homeowners maybe not have to put in a new system or not have to, because maybe there's just a clog in a line after the tank, or maybe the pipe fell down after the outlet pipe there with the earth shifting. And we've saved a lot of people from having to do those types of things. And I don't remember this one particularly, but if you guys ever have these reports and you want me to look at it, I'll be glad to read them for you. And like John said, I mean, we can't always get out to all of these. I mean, there's plenty of work to go around to most of these people, but and the whole lateral line replacement, was it just one or multiples?
it was just the one. It was the basically the loop system. They had to but they, to get up to code, they had to go 400 feet because the original lay was like 200, back in the
Right.
Probably
What
the
county was
80s.
this?
Say again.
What county was this?
Cass. It was Cass.
Oh, okay. Well, and so that'll be another thing that you guys can kind of add to what you do is check in with the counties. Ask them, say, hey, have you guys seen this? What was your feedback on this? Because if another company had done that before and they've already seen something, and it just wasn't reported, to you or whomever, like that would have been something that the county could have maybe given some advice on. They're not always correct either, so keep that in mind. They go to the
Well,
same.
that was Rusty. That was what really raised it up was when they came out to do the the work completed inspection to give the green light. Hey, go ahead and let Cofelt pay them out and go ahead and close all this stuff. They looked at it and they were like, I don't know what they were looking at, but you're good here, you're good there, and explained it to us, and we're just like, because it almost, we didn't, but that one inspection feedback at the time almost had us fall apart for a fourth. This would have been third time's a charm. So
yeah, not all county inspectors, not all septic installers, they're all not created equal. A lot of good installers will have really good relationships with the counties. Keep that in mind. We do a lot of conversations back and forth because they have EPA guidelines to follow that they're really stringent on. And then we have to follow obviously as well. But, I don't, that probably is the answer to your question. Yeah, maybe a second opinion would have been nice. But then again, the other person might have had a similar opinion and you would have dug it up and you still wouldn't have, you wouldn't have known.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that. Like yesterday when we were talking about, or Tuesday when we were talking about doing the offers where we can cancel if, say, it's over a $5,000 item. What if their brother says, oh, I can fix it for $800, and Rustlin comes in and says that won't fix it? That's just a Band-Aid. To really fix it, it's $7,000, $8,000. How does something like that go? Because technically their brother says they can fix it for $800, but is that considered the proper fix? I wasn't sure if anybody has run into any issues on that. When we were talking about the in-present condition where we can cancel if it's over a certain amount.
Yeah, that's, then you get into kind of the gray area of everything, right? Just like when we propose a repair, I had a guy the other day on a radon. He's like, oh yeah, I got a buddy that can do that. Not certified. He's a creative guy, no doubt, and could do it for a couple $100, but that wasn't going to get us to the finish line. Yeah, so far I haven't run into that, Jake, where we have a dollar amount and then someone's debating it. Typically if it's crystal clear, like, hey, this roof is shot, and here's a bid from a roofer or two. If this furnace is absolutely unsafe, here's a bid for a furnace. It's been more like that where it was pretty clear. With the one I did with Swaggart, there was some excessive settling and cracking in a foundation wall. So of course Scott's, he does everything at a high level. So before he even talked to me about it, he already had an engineer and an inspector and one bid in hand. And he was smart
Oh,
enough
wow.
to use the same basement guy that we use. So, there was nothing open for debate. But yeah, I could see situations where you might get into that. But again, the tool is the tool first and foremost to secure the house, right?
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, if I think that would be pretty rare, in my opinion, that you run into those kind of situations. We can what if this industry until we're blue in the face.
Very great.
But if we're just playing the odds and the percentages and what's most probable, I think it's more in line with what we talked about on Tuesday. And I had a few more things I was going to add to that. If John, anytime you want to go down that path.
Yeah, take it away, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So on Tuesday, and most of you guys were probably at our meeting, we kind of opened up something we haven't talked about in a while. And I think in these competitive offer situations, just using escalation clause is probably not going to be enough. You might even run into agents that refuse to use one. So we're going to have to kind of pivot and understand our other tools better. Nanette and I had a meeting Tuesday afternoon to go through this in detail. And, now we will have the conversation with the buyer of all aspects that can be used should they choose to pull them out in a competitive situation. And, first and foremost, inspections, the timeline for inspections. Do we want to limit our inspections to just a couple of things? Do we want, or would we want to put a dollar amount like you just spoke of, that, something is not an unacceptable condition unless it is in excess of whatever, $2,000, $5,000, whatever that magic number is. If we're using box one, you remember box one's a make it or basically it's take it or leave it. Is if I got a take it or leave it contract and I want to put in there that we would not propose a cancellation unless we had a single individual item above X, 2,000, 5,000, whatever that number is. I think those are going to be the tools in 2025 that the people winning it at the highest rates will be using in competitive situations. Now, if you're not in a competitive situation, guys, this is not it's not all that important, but it is really important that you understand it, because you will get, if you're on the listing side, you will get these in offers. If you're on the buyer side, you may all of a sudden work with a buyer that's working in that little hot zone price range, and you've got to understand them and be able to convey to them the pros and cons with each tool. So this will probably be the new thing to harp on, as we get into the spring and summer of this, what we hope is a really, really, busy year. Any questions on that? I know a lot of you guys were at the meeting and we talked about it. You can only cover so much in 20, 25 minutes, but I certainly tried to hit some of the bullet points.
Hey, Lonnie, real quick on you talking about the different tools that we can use. That gives me a great idea for what we can do to improve our buyer consult. I think, we're gonna add that sheet, our cover sheet that we submit with your offer. This is what it looks like, and here's all the things that we can do. And I think we're gonna add in, no cancellation unless it's a single item is over, and then we just have a blank there, X amount, whatever the buyer decides that number is going to be, and we can give them a recommendation depending on the price point of the house or whatever. But it's a great opportunity to walk your buyer through what that's going to look like. There's what your offer is going to look like when we present it, and this is the best way to do it, we found. And the success rate of getting a house under contract for our clients is super high when we do this right here, because it communicates really well with the listing agent. And also, by the way, we make a phone call to the listing agent to make sure they have this offer. And prior to the offer, see if there's anything else that we can do term wise to make it a win for them. Just to kind of show them like what you're going to do for them when you're in the heat of the battle. Things are going to move fast sometimes, as it does in multiple offer situations. And then boom, you get it done. They know what's going to happen. You do it and you win for your clients. So I appreciate that piece right there. It gives us an ability to tweak our presentation a little bit, put one more document in there with the buyer consult and show them exactly what their offer is going to look like to a listing agent.
Yeah, and I think be prepared to be able to coach and consult with the listing agent. That you will run across listing agents that don't do a lot of listings, and maybe they're not familiar with what you're even talking about. So I think we will need to. I highly recommend a conversation and paper with it on your cover letter that, hey, by the way, here's the terms of our offer, notation. On the, we're limiting the inspection items to these figures, and nothing is an unacceptable condition unless an individual item exceeds $2,000, $5,000, or whatever that magic number is. Because there will be people, if our office is just getting our feet wet and really understanding this, think of how many people are absolutely in the dark.
Yeah, and we could also utilize that same strategy, couldn't we? To if there's not multiple offers, but we want to go in and try to lock something up, right? So we could do that same strategy and try to lock in something, whether it's been on 3 days or 30 days. Because sometimes we're currently in the mix of trying that approach now, hoping that nobody else comes in. We right on stuff. So we took that conversation you had with us there Tuesday and are applying that just 2 days later, even though it's not multiple offers. But we kind of told our buyer, we're like, let's go in and try to knock this out and lock it up. You're out of state. If somebody else comes in on this, we've already been beat out a couple times already, so it kind of gets old pretty fast. So
well, I think, we run into these situations, and we had a listing that was kind of in this category where the roof, heating, cooling were all 20 plus years. They're outstanding, working perfectly. But any buyer that was looking at the house was like, hey, I'm probably got to be thinking down the road of spending 15 or 20 grand, blah, 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 blah. Now, truth be known, I listed the house factoring all the age of the equipment in, but they were trying to double dip us a little bit. So I would have to share comps and show them, hey, this is a 330 house, not 315. And we've already kind of, put that in there. But if somebody was going to come in and try to negotiate on any house, it's probably not a bad idea, especially if they know they're going to have to chew that ground to make it clear, hey, we're coming in 20 grand low on this for these reasons. And so you don't feel like you're double dipped. We're going to go on and either exclude these from inspections or something along those lines. So, again, I think we just got to start thinking differently. So many things have come up in the last 5, 6, 7 years that just kind of we've all had to pivot on. But it's frustrating for me because I know as an agent showing houses, you finally find the right house and you don't get it. And you feel like, wow, now it's another, 2, 4, 6 week, trudge through houses on weekends and evenings. And so I think if we can improve our win rate, that's important but also staying within the framework of what's in the client's best interest. These tools are great, but if they don't fit the comfort zone of the client, and appraisal waivers is the best example. If the people don't have the cash to be able to execute an appraisal waiver, there's no conversation around that really. Yes, you could tell them about it, but at the end of the day, I recommend we tell them about all the tools just in case we find out later that their mom and dad are happy to throw in 20 grand if needed or something like that. Who else?
Jake, you got something?
Has anybody used that tool that Todd had talked about his company writing up an offer so you're no longer a contingent buyer?
It's like a different spin on the bridge loan, basically. I forget the name of the tool off the top of the head. I don't recall that one. I tried to use it though, Jake, for my mom's place in Florida, but she lives so close to the coast. They have a restriction on that zip code because of potential storm damage, and the time frame that they would be responsible for the house is too much of a liability for that zip code, so they don't do that in certain areas. And I can't not remember the name.
We had also tried to use it for a seller we had in Butler, a single mom, and her problem with it was there's like a 3-month window where she would have to make a payment on both houses. So they close and they get that 1 month, but there is a window there where for 3 months she was going to have to make a payment on both of the houses, which wasn't doable for her.
Yeah, I think that's a place that we're looking in on our team, to that tool point, Jake, is we're getting some challenging people that I shouldn't say that sounded wrong. We're getting some challenging situations with some of our people that they want to make a move, whether they're selling and or buying, but man, everything seems to have this like weird formula. If you can figure out how to get me there, then we'll do it. Otherwise we're stuck. So the challenge to us on one particular one I'm thinking of, and I don't want to say anything detail about it because I don't want to speak anything in or out of existence there with that deal, trying to get accepted. But for their scenario, like the 203K that you did, Jake, like that whole, you did a couple of those last year, and we kind of, they're approved conventional, but the price point's just not there. Like we're basically looking at, you know, less than flip stuff, right? So it's like, but they were approved. If they go FHA, they actually are approved for like double the amount of money. It's kind of weird. So we explained to them what, you know, like maybe the answer is this 203K thing. We've had an agent or two in our office that had this success with this, you know, the last 12 months. And maybe this is a type of program we got with, you know, the Fairway folks that utilize that, you know, their departments that can send us information. They did. So we got the, you know, the explanation portal that you go into, and we sent that to the, and they're like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. And we've been shopping those types of places ever since. And I think we're going to get our first W on that. Hopefully, again, I don't want to jinx anything, but you know, just something like that, where we're looking at some of all you guys' stuff and other examples throughout the industry of stuff that we're like, maybe somebody else has already thought this through. We don't need to try to reinvent the wheel, but through it, we're going to get a listing out of it, and then they're going to be able to purchase and get where they want to go, which is ultimately the most important thing. It's just this weird formula. It's like, because if we don't figure something like that out, if this doesn't work, which I think it will ultimately, but basically we kind of kept hitting a wall because something would pop up. We go look at it, you know, it's got termite damage or, you know, whatever. It's just not, it's not the right one. But that's kind of our business right now. There's business to be had, but it's all very complex. We're having to think way outside the box to get anything, you know, well, I shouldn't say anything, but basically to get the wins that we were getting 2-3 years ago, you know, we're having to really think outside the box.
Yeah, as the market gets more complex, more of these conversations become necessary because you'll find yourself in these situations. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's panic mode. It's call Darren, then move down to Lonnie, and then move down to Ryan, and then Tim, and right. I mean, that's what my phone looks like. And then it's maddening when I you know, we have something kind of complex pop up on the weekend. And it's something we've discussed on these calls multiple times. So the good news is the people that wish to go ahead and dig a little deeper and become a little more knowledgeable will have the upper hand in the market, and that's actually a good thing. Yes, it's more complicated, but you know, people will have to be better to have a high success rate. So I got a feeling at Southland anyway, that'll serve us extremely well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Lonnie. I've got another topic. I was hoping, is Darren on here? Did he get on here? I'm on my phone. Sorry, I got to look at the list of people. But we'll bring it up anyway because I think he's got a post about it, and some of you can probably weigh in about it because I've happened to be on the phone with him on something different yesterday about an issue we were having, trying to figure out a customer's or a client's, you know, how to best answer a client question. And I kind of asked, well, how's things in your world? And he was telling me, again, I don't think you mind sharing because he's got a post out there about it, but you might talk to him about it. It was news to me, as it normally always is, right? Because he's been doing this for a minute. But even Darren was like, I have no clue, John, how, and I'm figuring that out now. But it was Zillow and Realtor had a information on the portals for one of his listings that was out there, basically stating that a floodplain issue with a property that he had listed and has listed with, it's clearly not, and there's not been insurance, but it had something to do with, again, third party information that these companies hire, Zillow, Realtor, Trulia, and they're basically there's like EPA guidelines or something to that effect for like 100-year, 200-year flood information type thing. Well, so instead of in-housing that, they outsource it. They third party it. If I'm explaining this correctly, this was my understanding of it. But they also have certain level of control with the information that's coming into the Zillow and the Realtor Trulia. So this was popping up on the portals of people searching the property, even though it was not accurate to the local MLS system. So I think the long takeaway was, or the short end of it was their information on these sites is not localized, and oftentimes third-party company hired. And so he was having to overcome the hurdle of sellers that were like, well, you know, we need to fix that, or it's going to be a problem because people, you know, they're going to have a misconception about a property that's not in a floodplain or in a flood issued area. So anyway, just to your point, I thought that was interesting. Probably, you know, obviously get with Darren on more detail on that, or he'll probably share next week or whatever, but the team meeting. But man, it's almost like we're having to do more than just what we do normally. We have to check all these sites that are linking to our properties, and then how do we find the information to get to where that information gets corrected, or if it does. So I just thought that was interesting.
Well, John, when it comes to those floodplain maps, a lot of the times, even those third-party companies, they're not updated maps is the biggest thing. I mean, that's kind of part of my background. So
Oh, cool.
that's really where it comes to, is because locally they're updated. But when you get to a larger scale, a lot of times they'll pull stuff that is in the past or has not been updated in 15 or 20 years, especially with the way the weather systems have come through the last couple of decades.
Okay, that's good to know, because I wouldn't have known that. Yeah, that's good, Steve. I appreciate you adding that in there. I remember down like the lake, down the lake areas, there's those FEMA lines, from your proximity from lake shoreline to corner of your house, and all those easements, that kind of thing. But as far as creeks and rivers and low-lying areas out here in the flatlands, how do we know that? I guess my biggest takeaway too, to your point, Steve, and then Darren's was, but see, that's hard. Do we tie all our time up trying to check all these sites, or let that stuff come to us? Because it has a way of, it always has a way of bringing itself to light. If somebody, obviously, if one of our clients has an issue, they're going to call us up and go, hey, I got a phone call and Realtor shows this, or Zillow shows that, and that's all stuff out of our control. But it is something to just know about, I think, just to, the more we know, right? What else? Does anybody else have anything?
I have a little something. Brandy and I and Mary Beth Stevens went on a little tour on Tuesday, a Tuesday tour, and man, those houses were big and pretty. They were like $2 million properties. I just encourage everybody to go visit some of those, because it sure does make you want to think a little bigger than our $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 houses. Yeah, they're pretty nice. And the views are to die for. They were beautiful. The pool and then the lake, like it was just awesome.
Very cool. Was the lunch good?
Oh yeah, it was good too. So were the cookies.
I missed out on the cookies, Sandy. I just did the
Yeah,
lunch.
that was at the next house, Ryan.
Well, we
I
ate
know.
They
one
were
with
good.
you. We ate one for you. It's okay.
Thank
We
you.
got
we
it.
did.
Thank you.
Well, if you start in the kitchen and you get the cookie first, then you tour the house, and when you come back through the kitchen and you're like, oh, cookies? Really? Yes, I think I'll take one. There's a whole strategy to it.
Wow, Brandy, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Start there first, do the tour, and in there. It's fine.
We got this mastered.
Yeah, it was great. It was
It
great.
was. But anyway, we need to like think bigger, I feel like. Because sometimes we get stuck in a little funk, and we just go $300,000 house, $400,000 house, 500, but why not 2 million, 2.6? Those were good.
Well, Sandy, I did talk to Caleb, and he goes, man, these are hard to sell. I said I
They
can
are.
imagine the price point at those are at the circles you need to run in and the connections you need to have to find the top 1% of the 1% that would purchase something like that. You gotta know those people or be able to reach them, and the marketing dollars you'll need to invest with that listing at the same time. There's going to be high pressure from those people too. That house, especially the one that had the lunch in it was empty. So an empty house is still a house that has to be maintained. And so that pressure, I think, mounts there as well. So anyway,
Well,
I loved it. I loved it and would love to
yeah,
list
I
property.
think I could buy one fancy suit or outfit, for a fancy outing once a month. No one would ever know I wore the same suit every time, but you know what I mean. Hey, I could do that. Yeah, go to those little country clubs, right, Lonnie? We can do that.
Yeah. Amber, when we first got married, of course, I was day trading, living on the beach, didn't really have a job, whittling through my savings, and I, of course, get married. But it was time for the honeymoon, and the last thing in the world I needed to be doing was going to Hawaii for a 7 or 8 day honeymoon. Of course, where did I go? Hawaii. And as I went through hotels, it was very, I would gravitate towards, good hotels, but certainly not that top tier. And what did I do? I went ahead and said, what's the most expensive place? And it was the Four Seasons at Maui, which at the time was the premier property. And that was on one of those shows that we've all watched here recently. So, we had no business being in a hotel. The price I paid, no, not within our budget constraints. Of course, we got the room that was like in a garden area, it wasn't oceanfront and all that. We just wanted to be in the room, so to speak. You know what I mean? But when you do things like that, it'll push you one of two ways. It'll either motivate you to say, this is how I want to roll, or you'll look at it to say it's pretentious and I don't need to play with these people. So, and by the way, there's no right or wrong answer. Everybody's got to figure out where they are and where they want to be. But for us, those kind of things kind of spurred us and kind of gave us a little bit of drive, in that, hey, this is kind of, we'd like to, in 10 or 15 years, be in this kind of category, to travel to places like this, but not just places like this, but stay in places like this and rub elbows with these people. We were at the pool the first day and nobody speaks English. Half the people are Asian or Indian and, some Americans, but, it was just a melting pot of successful people. And of course, Joe Montana and his wife and kids popped down next to us. And I'm literally the only person that knows that's Joe Montana, and I'm about to lose my mind. But you never know. But the bigger picture point is, just different things can motivate us, and help us, find a little bit of drive and a sense of direction.
He would have just retired right then, wouldn't he have, Lonnie?
Would have been 2000 and 2000. So I can't remember what years he played, but yeah,
He was like in the late
recently
90s.
retired,
So
right?
yeah, he must have just retired. So
Yeah.
obviously coming off the Chiefs. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you
I'm
know what?
not
He drinks
saying
Budweiser just like everybody else. So,
That's right.
And I'm not saying I want to rub noses or elbows or whatever you call with those people all the time, but I could once a month and sell a few houses and then go back to my dungeon. I could do that. I could live like that.
Yeah. But
And
even,
they all,
go
they're
out to
all,
a nice dinner and, go to the place that you typically wouldn't go and, push yourself a little bit. Yeah, it might cost a little more, but maybe you split an entree. There's different strategies to be at Eddie V's and, those kind of places.
yeah.
I think it could be eye opening. And again, sometimes it tells people, hey, this is cool, but this isn't where I would want to spend my money. And honestly, this just isn't that important to me. Is the steak at Jess and Jim's just as good? Probably so, for being perfectly honest with you, and dramatically less money.
But the houses aren't 2.6 million either,
Right,
the
right.
people that you meet. So yeah, I guess you just have to kind of weigh it out.
Yep.
Play
Well, I
the
think that,
game.
yeah, that brings up a good point too. I think, what is the process, Ryan, on that? Like you mentioned, Caleb mentioned that, they're not easy to sell. So it's that time invested, time valuation, ROI that we have to constantly be doing on these, there's only two things, right, that really make a business successful or not, right? At least I heard this somewhere on TikTok, but it was the what's the return on investment of our time, the most valuable currency we all have because we don't get more of it. But then the second was the profit margins. And so we're kind of balancing that out because we've had a lot of things kind of hitting, like James as a buyer's agent at these like 150, 200, which is fantastic. I mean, I think we're going to help them just as much as we would help a $1 million listing, but we're constantly evaluating that too. Cause that question that Caleb, or that comment that he made, that's something we're kind of always asking ourselves is like, what's the timeline? Obviously we're working for our people and we serve them, but then we're also balancing that against life, what we got going on, being, for me, being dad, being, this, being that, and then because we can't be everywhere at once, but then we also take the same amount of time to sell a $150,000 listing as we do a $1.5 million listing. So yeah, that answer is somewhere in the middle for us.
John, for me, and Lonnie taught me this back early in my career. You look for that sweet spot of the market, and right now you'd say 350 to 450 is a great sweet spot of the market. We have a large pool of buyers that are attracted to those prices of houses with this economy that we have. And I'd take 7 of those listings over any one of those listings in Winnebago. And the reason why is we have the ability to reach the clientele that would purchase those types of house at a high level versus trying to find the one buyer at the the $2 to $5 million range purchaser. That sounds great. Oh, wow, they could be a $2 to $5 million purchaser. Yeah, but they're very particular on what they're going to buy, especially on a resale. If they're not building a new home and they're going to buy a resale, then they're going to be very particular on that. So again, a client of that magnitude, they're gonna want to make sure that they have your undivided attention on their property because obviously the results are there, but you got to be able to deliver the message on the market saturation with a property type like that and how long it's going to take, because it's not going to be it could be a 30-day listing if you're priced right. However, it also might be a 12-month listing, could be a 14-month listing at a certain price point when you're looking for that buyer. And I'd kick it to Lonnie. He'd know more than I would on that level. But that's the note I got from him early in my career. I'm like, find that sweet spot. Where are your people at? Where's your tribe and your sphere? And work that, because that's where you're going to hit a home run with winning trust with people. And then you'll build your clientele. I mean, we started out I ran my numbers, 137,000 was my average sale price. I think it was my first and second year, right in that range, 137. And it's increased some, but I still think we're just right at 325 or 350 right now. And that's a great price point. It's wonderful because there's a big pool of people. So think about where are your people, where is your sweet spot in the market? And it could be like, I think Kalina probably can pull those, $2-3 million buyers. She has those sphere in that circle that she can run in. I don't have that. So I know where my market is, and that's the zone I'm going to stay in. That's the lane I'm going to stay in to produce the unit count.
I think you have to live where you want to sell. I think basically, because if you're living like he is, Caleb lives there. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, so if he lives there, that's the people he's going to be around. Like he's going to be,
Good point.
they're probably the same mowers or whatever. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not opposed to having one of those things or a commercial. Like commercial's not, commercial takes forever too, but I'm not opposed to it. And then do all my regular, eye to eye competition, I can do that too.
Another way to meet more of those buyers at higher price points is to hold open houses at homes in higher price point where you meet them. So, and even do some marketing around them. Even if not your listings, share those listings so people see you as someone who works with that price. So,
right.
But I think what Sandy was trying to get across is don't hit a ceiling. Don't put yourself under. Don't think bigger. That's Sandy. She's always thinking bigger. She's always thinking outside the box. So she's just reminding us, don't stay where you're at.
Well, Sandy,
always be growing.
what I got from it, Sandy, was sometimes we get so tunnel vision when we just put our head down all the time and we're just grinding it out all day long. When we're in Belton, Raymore, Peculiar, Harrisonville, this part of Cass County, sometimes we just put our head down and we look up and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole big world out there. There's nice houses just right over here in Winnebago. It was just kind of cool to just and then also run into other agents that I haven't seen in a long time. It was wonderful to go over there. Yeah, we got some free lunch.
Cool.
Yeah, we saw beautiful houses. It was a gorgeous day, but it was kind of like a little jolt to the system and just like kind of snap you out of it a little bit and just go, oh my gosh, there's a whole new world out here. Don't forget that.
Yeah, don't forget that. And also the other piece to that is maybe you're not selling $2.6 million houses, but I was looking on the Business Journal for the top real estate offices yesterday. And two of them were Reese Nichols, but Brian Huff's team, 177 million a year. I'm like, he's just a normal person, I mean, really, he's just got a team of people. So,
and so Sandy invited him to come to our office. Mr. Brian Huff, $177 million producer. She invited him. That's Sandy. She'll ask anyone anything and love it. So if Brian Huff comes to the office, we're all gonna have to be in the room and listen. We'll be there.
We are gonna have to. And I think we could learn a lot from him, like his beginnings and all that. So 177 million a year is no drop in the bucket.
That's awesome.
And he's not doing it himself. Like he has a way he's doing it. So let's talk to him.
As a transaction coordinator.
I'm sure.
What are his margins?
Systems and models. Right?
The Parade of Homes tour is still going on through the 11th. If you want to look at the homes, it's open. I'm looking at it right now. So 11 to 6.
Yep.
And you can go and check out a lot of great homes. Maybe meet some builders even. I love going to those and looking at those and getting some video content or pictures too
yes, that's what I was gonna say, video content,
and it's free.
That's all good stuff, man. We're coming up on 11 or just turned over. Jake, you had a comment on there. Expand on that for a parting thought.
Well, like what Sandy was saying, you kind of have to live where you want to sell. I was disagreeing a little bit with it. I was going to say just sell where you want to live instead of vice versa.
That's true.
Yeah. So if we think next level, we go to the next level, right? And we're really good at that. Southland, a big part of that's these calls and everybody offering in what's going on in their lives and their business. And Lonnie, you'll continue to be foremost of all of us here in the next week or two with everything going on, and we'll be in touch on that. And then everybody else, let's go out and sell something, right?
Have a great day, guys.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.